the amygdala has actually, within the last couple of decades, received a lot of attention in emotional literature. So it receives a lot of input from higher visual areas, higher auditory areas, and somatosensory cortices, so that it can actually receive a lot of the information from the body that we can react to. Also from areas in the hippocampal regions and in the medial temporal lobe, so the perirenal cortex and the parahippocampal cortex. So it receives a lot of input from these regions, and then it projects to a lot of other regions, so the prefrontal cortex, especially the orbitofrontal cortex and the anterior cingulate cortex, the striatum, so basal ganglia structures, and back again to sensory cortex, also the hippocampus, and back again to the perirenal cortex. So it seems to be involved in a loop between some of the regions that it receives input from, and therefore it could, the whole idea of separating it into either an emotional response being a reaction to something externally, or something that arises because you react to something. Both of these ideas could be supported by the way that these circuitries are, because it's circuitries where it receives input from the regions that also are involved in receiving input from the external world, but again it can also feed back to these regions and change the state of those regions. So one of the classical ways of studying the amygdala has been in fear conditioning, and the idea with fear conditioning is that you pair an unharmful stimulus, for instance it could be a tone or a light or something, with a harmful stimulus. And what you will see is that you train a subject, usually it's been done in animals, a lot of these studies, so you present this unharmful tone, and then there is a shock. And what you then see is that you have increased heart rate, you have decreased salivation, stomach feelings, respiration changes. A lot of the signs related to fear will arise after you make this training and shock. But what you then see afterwards is that in the test phase, where you only present the light or the tone, depending on what type of stimulus it is, you will see exactly the same signs. So there is this classical conditioning paradigm where you first present something unharmful, then you present it with a shock, and then afterwards you get the same reactions. And at least it seems that the amygdala can do a lot of these things, so there is a lot of anatomical connections that can lead to these behavioral signs from the amygdala. And if you then go to the most detailed circuitry, you can actually see how these regions are and how they can actually project to the different parts of the brain that can elicit these responses. So a classical conditioning paradigm that has been used in a lot of studies, and it's highly involving the amygdala, because it can actually receive all the sensory inputs, so the unharmful sensory input, and when they are paired together with the harmful sensory input, they can actually elicit this reaction.